Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaRevelis and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link down in the description to the page, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. My name is Joshua Revelis. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down with fellow enthusiasts to talk about what's going on in the technology, business, and gaming world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Revelis. I'm your host as usual, and we're coming back to you with another episode today, which obviously, based on the polls, you guys seem to really like the 5G topic, so we're going to talk about it. However, we're not doing this one alone, so I have a special friend with me here. It's one of the guys I play Rainbow with, but he's really into this topic, so I thought it was a bright idea to have him on. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you, Cameron.
What's up?
So yeah, Cameron, so how's your day going so far, bro?
Pretty good.
All right, so why don't you introduce yourself, because I usually do this with all the guests just to so the audience can get a feel with who you are and what you do essentially.
So my name is Cameron and I'm in 8th grade. I like playing video games with my friends and like doing karate and yeah, just hanging out with my friends.
I know a lot. I'm just a little side input. You guys are probably like, wait, an 8th grader? And I'm like, yes. I know his voice doesn't sound the part, but yes, he's an 8th grader. But in my opinion, he's really smart. He knows what he's talking about essentially with this, because he brought this article to my attention and we're going to talk about it. So the main topic we're talking about today is the pros and cons of 5G, which I know this is a very hot topic, especially when you look at how the smartphone market is changing essentially right now. That it's promoting heavily 5G. Like if you watch Google's I/O conference this week, you would have saw that they mentioned that Google is going to be supporting 5G. So clearly this is something big, and the industry is very, I'd say, nudging in that direction. They want you to go in that direction. However, that doesn't mean there isn't drawbacks, and we're going to talk about it because this article does mention a good amount of the drawbacks. So Cameron, since you were the main one that showed it to me, like, do you have any thoughts about the article, or like what did you think about it when you first saw it?
Honestly, I think there are a lot of drawbacks to this, and I mean there's some good things about it, but it's just a lot of negatives.
Yeah, like we're going to go over it, and I think let's just start going over it essentially. So the article is by a man named Jody McCutcheon. Okay, I know I'm butchering that, but who cares? So he starts off the article by saying that, as the old saying goes, give us an inch and inevitably we'll want a mile, and another technology. And who doesn't want faster, bigger, or smaller, more efficient? Take wireless and current broadband cellular network platform, 4G or 4th generation, all and everything that precedes. So essentially, he's discussing over a lot of the, I'd say, like the history of where we're at right now, because currently, as most of you are aware, we're on 4G right now. Like if you check your phone, you have a 4G connection, and sometimes you get a 3G, but we're pushing into 5G. So, but he does, if you look at the article, just skimming through it, he does go over some of the benefits of it, because there's a lot of benefits to 5G, and I think that's where we should start, is the benefits of it. And going over the article, the main thing it talks about is bandwidth. So I think it was Cameron, you showed a picture of it regarding it. Like, do you mind bringing it up?
Yeah, it was like a chart, and it showed like 3G, which it said 384 kilobits per second. There's a difference between kilobytes and kilobits. 4G, it said 100 megabits per second, and then 5G is 10 gigabits per second, which pretty much 5G, the 10 gigabits per second translates to about 1.2 gigabytes per second.
I know, like, to be honest, guys, that's incredibly crazy if you think about it. Like, we're talking about you're downloading gigabytes a second. Like your internet speed isn't getting that. You're getting at best 100 megabytes a second, but you're not getting a gigabyte a second. It's ridiculous. However, besides the pros, clearly, like, there's more pros to it, obviously. Like, yes, not only are you able to have faster download speeds, but at the same time, upload speeds will improve as well, because data will be able to transfer faster. And for companies, this is very useful because data is a very important thing in companies, so they need information moving as quick as they can. So with 5G connection, essentially, yeah, you're going to get data moving everywhere a lot faster. And obviously, yeah, if you have a smartphone and you're using your data out in the city and you're not connected to Wi-Fi, then yeah, you're going to get a really good signal. And I think that's a lot of benefits. But if you notice a trend with the benefits, a lot of the benefits seem to fall in line with data, essentially. It's all about speed, but there's not really that much more benefits to it besides improving speed and pretty much, yeah, that's all it is. Just improving the speed of your connection is all it does. But when you look at the drawbacks, we do run into a really sketchy situation, which we're going to talk about that right now. So, Cameron, you mentioned about a picture that you brought to my attention. It's like, do you want to talk about that picture you brought up?
Oh, okay. So I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a picture. All right, and it was somebody installing a tower of 5G, and he was wearing a hazmat radiation suit. So, you know it's pretty serious whenever you see someone wearing one of those.
Like, I hope you guys understand this. Like, maybe it was a joke, maybe it wasn't, but we should take that with a sense of sincerity, I think, to a degree, especially when we're talking about installing a tower, because based on the picture, I haven't seen it, but based on what Cameron's told me about it, like, it looked like he was actually installing a real tower, and the dude was wearing a hazmat suit. And I think that's something very scary, because you're like, wait a minute, why do you have to wear a hazmat suit while installing a tower, especially for cellular connection? But one of the main drawbacks that, as the article talks more about it, is health concerns, essentially, is because obviously we know how signal works, like transferring signals. It all goes by waves and everything. Like, there's obviously, I think we've all been in chemistry before, and we've seen like the different waves, like every single one of them. There's gamma waves, there's radiation, like et cetera, et cetera. Like, it all has a varying degree. So based on what we're seeing, it seems like it's considering that the 5G waves are almost similar to the waves that would, similar radiation that would cause cancer, based on what we're seeing, because it talks about the health concerns. In the article, it says, first, it's important to know that in 2011, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified RFR as a potential 2B carcinogen and specified that the use of mobile phones could lead to specific forms of brain tumors. Many studies have associated low-level RFR exposure with the literature of health effects, including DNA single and double strand breaks, oxidative damage, disruptive of cell metabolism, increased blood-brain barrier permeability, melatonin reduction, disruption of brain glucose metabolism, and generation of stress proteins. As mentioned, the new technology, 5G, utilizes higher frequency mmW bands, which give off the same dose of radiation as airport scanners. These effects of this radiation on public health have yet to undergo a rigorous of long-term testing. Adoption of 5G will mean more signals carrying more energy through the high-frequency spectrum, with more transmitters located closer to the people's homes and workplaces, basically a lot more and more potent RFF flying around us. It is no wonder that apprehension exists over potential risks to both humans and environmental health. So this little section is mainly focused on the health concerns, because obviously, like we mentioned, is the radiation that it's producing is not really safe, and we haven't really tested it. And this is where I think I want to apply a little bit more of ethical theory behind it, that we have to really think about this, especially because depending on whichever ethical theory you like to adopt, essentially, like whether it be utilitarianism, whether it be respect for persons, Aristotle's virtue ethics, whichever one of the three that you really fall under, I think this is where we need to really start thinking, because we're playing with some fire, essentially, is what we're doing. And I think Cameron would probably agree with this, because obviously he brought it to my attention, that when we look at I mainly want to refer to this article, or not really an article, but more of a journal that was written from, let me pronounce his name correctly, Neil Postman in 1998. And this was a talk that he gave in Denver, Colorado during that year. And he talks about different ideas of how technology has changed over the years. And he presents 5 different ideas, but I mainly want to focus on the first and the fourth idea, because I think it plays a key role in understanding what we're dealing with, essentially. So Postman's first idea is that all technological changes is a trade-off. I like to call it a Faustian bargain. Technology giveth and technology taketh. This means that for every advantage a new technology offers, there is always a corresponding disadvantage. The disadvantage may exceed in importance the advantage, or the advantage may be well worth the cost. Now, this may seem to be a rather obvious idea, but you would be surprised at how many people believe that new technologies are unmixed blessings. And just skimming through a little bit, because he started talking about computers, he talks about how ask anyone who knows something about computers to talk about them, and you will find that they will unabashedly and relentlessly extol the wonders of computers. You will also find that in most cases they will completely neglect to mention any of the liabilities of computers. This is a dangerous imbalance, since the greater the wonders of technology, the greater will be its negative consequences. And going into the fourth idea, scrolling down to the fourth idea, what it says is, the fourth idea is technological change is not additive, it is ecological. So when you look at the definition of these words, ecological means is that it affects everything around it, and that the original never stays the same, while additive means that the original stays the same, but you're adding something to it. So the example Postman provides is providing a drop of red dye in a clear glass of water. Clearly, you're not going to have a clear glass of water and a red dye like drop. You're not going to have that. The dye is going to change the water as a whole, and it's going to become something new. It's the same thing. And he talks about another example is when the printing press was invented. You didn't have old Europe plus the printing press. You became a different Europe because of the printing press. And you see how this, I would say American society is a prime example of this and how we've changed, essentially. Like, the Industrial Revolution changed how we essentially conduct business, how we live our lives. It essentially changed many things, and depending on who you ask, like, some people say, yeah, like, it did a lot of benefits, but at the same time, it also caused damage to the environment, which led to global warming. And then you have smartphones. Like, when the smartphone was invented, it essentially changed how we conduct our everyday lives. It became part of our workflow. It became part of our, I'd say, social interaction with people. But at the cost, it led to smartphone addiction, which means that people don't really want to let go of their phone, essentially. So, I don't know, like, what do you think about that, Cameron? What do you think about that?
I mean, it's really changed our society as a whole, like, with the whole cell phone thing. Yeah, it's just changed how we live, basically.
Yeah. So, going over more of the cons of this, 5G, essentially, because I know there was, like, little excerpts I got from it. It says, like, other distressing research. Like, I don't know, like, is there anything specific in there that catches your eye, Cameron, that I'm not seeing right now?
There's another article that I was reading earlier, and it's more health effects, but it's more, okay, so one of them, it says it causes psychiatric effects such as depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative issues, heart flutters, tachycardia, basically just rapid heartbeat. I probably butchered the word, but it affects your fertility. It's more affected males than females, but damage was notable in both. Changes your cell development. It affects your eyesight and damages your DNA. Could cause breaks in the strands of our DNA. It introduces free radicals. Affects the nervous system and affects your skin. It says one study shows our skin absorbs this form of radiation through our sweat ducts. So,
I see. And it's interesting when you think about it, because when you look at Postman's ideas, like, he has a point, essentially. Like, it does relate to what we're talking about, because not all technological changes are good, essentially. Is that there always is a drawback, and sometimes the better the technology, the bigger the drawback there will be. And obviously that is true. I do agree with that. Like, especially like with the Industrial Revolution, yes, like, there was a huge drawback, because, you know, global warming is a very hot topic nowadays, and a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people associate the cause of global warming because, like, they treat the Industrial Revolution as a starting point of where we got to where we are right now. Like, if you look at a lot of charts discussing that topic, they always seem to point at that specific moment because they treat it as the Exodus is what they treat it as. And some people, when they think of the smartphone innovation, they think of when the first iPhone launched, which I think that's true because, like I said, this is just a little side topic going off the topic a little bit, but it does relate to it to a degree. When the first iPhone launched, there were so many things that could have gone wrong when they were showing it off that if Steve Jobs did something wrong while presenting the phone, I guarantee you would not be using a smartphone right now. It was so precise that he had to do everything to the T to make everything work the way it was, to make sure that when they were presenting the phone, that the phone didn't crash or something didn't go wrong. Because like I said, a new technology, nobody wants to see a new technology, like, no pun intended, blow up in your face. Like it's the same thing that's recently happened with the Galaxy Fold. It was a new form factor and everything, and obviously, yeah, it had some flaws. And then people, they saw the flaws and exploited it to hell. But you get the point. It's the same thing, is that it catches eyes, essentially, when you mess up. And I think the first iPhone was the first example of, we got to the point, the technology, if something went wrong, we would be concerned, obviously.
Another fail was like the Note 8 when that exploded. Like when that started exploding.
Oh, I think that's the Note 7, my bad.
Oh, yeah. It caused a lot of attention though. And like it just, news headlines were talking about it and everything.
Yeah, that is true. Like the Note 7 is another prime example. It was one of, at the time, it was considered the best phone on the market, and then when it started blowing up, it caught mainstream attention. Airlines banned it completely. Like, people were scared for their life because
basically just
the thing was blowing up. Actually, like, it was legit blowing up. It was a bomb, pretty much, essentially is what it was. But going back to the topic, now that we've gone over to the pros and cons, I really want us to evaluate them and think about it, because like I said, the pros, I think the pros are a little bit more easy to evaluate because, yeah, like as somebody that likes to game a lot, yeah, I like having really good Wi-Fi. Like, I want my signal to be great. I need my signal to be able to download everything with no problem. Like, obviously, people that have gigabyte Wi-Fi, they're able to download things. Like I said, it's basically gigabyte Wi-Fi. Like, you're getting a gigabyte a second.
Well, it's more, okay, so I know from personal experience, the gigabyte, well, it's really gigabit Wi-Fi. It's kind of a marketing scam. Well, not really a scam, but like, it's really gigabit, which there's a difference. So really, you're only getting like maybe 400 to 500 megabytes per second. But I mean, it's still really good considering. But
yeah, like I know a lot of people, when they think of gigabyte Wi-Fi, I know the main one they talk about is Google Wi-Fi. Like, because that, I've seen like a lot of videos where people talked about it, and they're showing like, 1,000 megabytes down and up without any issue. So, but I think you're probably referring to the AT&T one, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Yeah, the AT&T one, yeah. I have personal experience with that because my brothers have it. And that signal, yeah, I'll agree with you, because it caps at a specific amount of devices, because it's not really... They're not real. I wouldn't say that they're not using fiber optic cables, but the fact is that it's limiting itself because they don't want you to get...
It also depends on the software that you have, or the hardware that you have.
That is true.
If it can handle it. So
pretty much, because not, like I said, not everything can handle gigabyte Wi-Fi. Like, specific laptops or even computers have to have a specific Wi-Fi chip inside of them that can handle it. Some phones, like if you're using a phone from, say, 2016, you're probably not going to get a gigabyte signal in there at best.
Probably going to be capped at maybe 100 megabytes per second.
Realistically. And like even my Pixel 2 XL, like at best, even if I'm in those situations, I still get up to 500, but I'm not going to get the full gigabyte unless if I have like an 845, because the 845 supports gigabyte Wi-Fi essentially because it's built in with them. And then obviously, like as we keep upgrading, the 855 will have 5G and then etc. But you get the point essentially. But the main thing that we need to worry about is the health risk, because obviously, yes, like based on what we're talking about and what the article describes and based on the research conducted, it's very concerning, especially based on what they're saying, you're essentially creating mass cancer, essentially is what you're doing, is you're basically spreading cancer in the air, essentially. Like everybody's worst nightmare is what this is entailing. Obviously, I think it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I don't think that exaggeration should be taken lightly. Especially because, like we said, we still haven't tested this thing long term. A lot of the testing has been short term, and that's kind of a very troublesome thing, because especially when we're talking about a new innovation in, I'd say, in Wi-Fi, essentially, you can't rely on short term, because the short term doesn't really give you a broadened sense. And this is why when you look at a lot of the code of ethics for engineering, it talks about sustainable development. And sustainable development is basically managing your resources to benefit the people of today, but not compromising future generations. Essentially, is you're not trying to compromise the future. And I think that's kind of the main thing we have to worry about is, yes, technologically we're advancing at an incredibly fast rate. Like, you have crazy things like automated vehicles coming out, you have electric vehicles are starting to ramp up, you know, SpaceX is starting to do crazy stuff, like, and then 5G is basically becoming the 2019 meme, essentially, because it's everywhere. Like, everybody's saying, oh, we have 5G, we'll have 5G. Apple sadly won't have 5G, lol. They're not getting 5G anytime, well, probably like 2020, 2021 at best, but you get the point. But like Postman suggests is that the greater the technology change or technological change, the more dangerous the drawbacks will be, essentially. And I think that's what we have to worry about is the drawbacks, because like I said, there is nothing that doesn't have drawbacks. Essentially, there's always a catch to everything. This is why I always tell people there's nothing free in life. There's always a catch. There's always something there. And I think this is what we need to be careful with, because, well, yeah, like, this has drawbacks. We're not going to stand here and say that they don't, clearly. Like, if you have people wearing freaking hazmat suits while installing a tower, what do you expect? Like, there's something going on. No normal person does that. You don't wear a hazmat suit unless if you're messing around with some dangerous crap. Like, let's be real. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, what's your opinion on this, Cameron?
I just really think it's scary, honestly, the fact that he was wearing that suit while installing a tower.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm not gonna lie. The whole thing with the tower is just, like, what the heck, man? Like, this is ridiculous. And even then, if you look at a lot of the stuff, like, this is still dangerous stuff, guys. Like, yes, there's benefits and there's drawbacks. And I think we have to evaluate these evenly. But I think overall, like, what's your opinion on 5G as a whole, Cameron? Like, where do you stand in the discussion? Do you believe that we should go forward with this? Or, well, I'm not going to give you a yes or no. I want you to state your opinion. I think that's better.
I think, okay, it's a good idea, but all the health risks and everything, I feel like we shouldn't do it. But, I mean, the government's probably still going to do it anyways. So, we just got to limit it, maybe. So, I also saw on here, it said, hold on. Where was it at? Here are a few things you can do to minimize current contact with harmful radiation. Keep your distance. As always, I suggest keeping your cell phone outside of your room at night and avoiding screens for the few hours before bedtime because of the blue light. And it says turn it off when you're not using it, especially at bedtime. Just turn off your Wi-Fi. It doesn't completely eliminate EMF exposure, but it will reduce it. So, I mean, you can reduce it, but it's still gonna happen. You're still gonna make contact with it. But, I don't know, I think it's good as an idea, but, like, in practice, it's just dangerous, really.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, my opinion is, especially after taking my ethics course, it made me think a lot more about this, especially because this is a reason why I didn't want to do this topic for a while, because... And I think I'll probably even expand on this a little bit more if I get the opportunity to do an episode with my ethics teacher so we can talk about this, because he's researching this as well. I think this is something we need to highly, highly research. Like, this, we should not, in my opinion, I like the idea of increasing the signal. However, as somebody that's, like, you know, has personal experience with having family members affected with cancer, then yeah, and I'm not going to say, like, oh, pity me. Like, I'm not going to go that far, but because I know there's a lot of people that have instances that they have, you know, cancer affects their family. And so I know what the results are. I know how it feels like to be in that situation. So the fact that you're possibly presenting the idea that you're giving widespread cancer, then yeah, I think in my opinion, I would be heavily concerned. Like I don't see that many tech YouTubers talking about the drawbacks. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm not saying that they don't care. I'm not going to say they're immoral human beings. I'm not going to go that far, because I do look up to them, and I do have some conversations with some people in the YouTube tech community. But the fact is that you shouldn't ignore the drawbacks. Like, these need to be discussed in public. Like, you have people like MKBHD and Jonathan Morrison. Like, you have all these people that have over 1 million subscribers. You have Linus Tech Tips. You have like Unbox Therapy. You have all these big name people that are like basically posting videos viewed by millions of people, yet they don't talk about the drawbacks of these things. And I think that's kind of I'd say, in my opinion, not trying to be mean, but that's kind of a disservice to your audience, essentially, because you're hyping up 5G. Like, you're hyping it up. You're saying this is the next best thing, but you have to tell the people what the drawbacks are. Like, essentially, that's just hiding the truth, essentially, is all you're doing. Now, I think that it's because, I don't know. My opinion is, I don't know what they believe behind the topic. I don't know if there's like information they've seen that I haven't seen, and I would love to have a discussion with them about it. But the fact of the matter is that we need to be cautious with this whole 5G thing, because, like I said, this isn't something that is just a one-time occurrence in human history. No, this is something that could shape the course of human history, is what we're talking about. Because you're talking about improving Wi-Fi technology to the point that we've never seen it before, essentially. Like, they've already been testing this for years. Like, obviously, Verizon's probably going to be the first one to launch it in the US, because, you know, all the big carriers are fighting to see who will win the race to 5G to be the first one to bring it. And clearly Verizon's the first one, because, well, they have the most towers out of everybody. They have arguably the best signal. I would argue that a little bit, but yeah, like, besides the whole anti-consumer things behind Verizon, yes, I do believe they'll be the first ones. But even though I don't think Verizon's dumb enough, well, maybe, but they're probably dumb a little bit. But I think they're still going to go through the whole 5G thing without any concern. And I think that's kind of dangerous, essentially. Like, AT&T, at least with AT&T, they're not that dumb. Like, obviously the whole 5G evolution thing, which I'm going to Jesus Christ. The 5G evolution stuff is so stupid. Like, I know some people are going to get offended because I said stupid. Bro, it's stupid. Like, get over it. Like, that's not 5G. That's all that is upgraded 4G. That's all that is. Like, I know, Cameron, you said you had experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I ran a speed test using Ookla, and it's pretty much the same thing as 4G. So,
yeah, I'm telling you guys, if you see the 5G evolution thing, it's not 5G. It's so dumb. Like, but I'm trying to think, where do we really go from here, essentially, as a society? Because, you know, like I said, depending on which ethical theory you really subscribe to, like, if you apply utilitarianism is based on the idea of providing the greatest good to the most amount of people. And depending if you're an act or rule utilitarian, or you believe in hedonistic utilitarianism or pluralistic, like, obviously hedonistic is providing the greatest pleasure to all people, to the most people possible. And then obviously pluralistic is that there's multiple goods, and that you would provide multiple greatest goods to the most people, essentially. Pluralism is that there's multiple pleasures, that there is a high, hedonism is a high or lower. Pluralistic is that there's multiples, essentially. If you go by the respect for person aspect, you have to think about, you know, I would say, if it's based on intrinsic respect, which respect for persons is that everybody has some basic form of respect, no matter what, then yeah, you have to think about it like, is this a violation of that respect to people? Because you're essentially causing harm to them, like, without them knowing. And then virtue ethics is that, I think with virtue ethics, you have to think about the intent. That's the main thing behind it, is, are you being intentful behind it? Like, what is the intent? Like, it does think about consequences and outlooks, but it has the requirement of intent. Like, where is your intent? Like, are you trying to lead people to be virtuous and happiness, or in the Greek word of eudaimonia, which means flourishing or happy, like, essentially that. So you have to think about it in those aspects. Like, if we go by utilitarianism, yeah, that's not really providing the greatest good to the most people, because if you're widespreading cancer to people, that's not providing the greatest good to the most people. That's obviously harming a lot of people, clearly. And some people make the argument that all this stuff is just mumbo jumbo. This is not proven facts, that these are just studies based on, minimal samples. But all, like I said, all this is still based on minimal samples. Like, they even talked about it. Like, 5G's only been tested short term. It's not long term. Like, we haven't really experimented with this for long term. Like, if you were telling me that we've been working on this for 100 years, and then I'd be all down for it, because that means obviously they figured it out. We know how to control it. But realistically, they've only been working on this for like not even a decade. So yeah, like, they're just about to throw this thing into the market. Like, bro, this thing only has 10 years at best, or that's probably at minimum 10 years at best, or like I said, minimum 2 decades at best, in my opinion, of research. That's not enough research, whether you think about it or not. No, like, if we're talking about a technology this important, this should not be a decade or 2 of research. This needs to be a century's worth of research, because this is something that, like I said, the radiation waves are very similar to the 5G connection waves, essentially. So we have to be very careful about this. But I don't know, where do you think society really can go from here, if we go through with this technology, essentially?
It possibly could go downhill, or it could stay the same. No one knows really until it's put into effect, honestly. It's scary to think about, but that's the harsh reality, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's, in my opinion, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, we don't really know until this thing is put into place, because that's when we'll really know. Like, when the 5G is implemented, I think this is where we need to be really mindful, and I think this is when the news and all the big YouTubers and everything start talking about it, because like, if they start seeing that 5G is causing widespread cancer and it's causing all this bad stuff that's being hinted at, essentially, or it's being referenced to cause, essentially, then I think this is where we're going to have a lot of people talk about it. And this is when I think at this point I might end up being too late, because in Postman's theory, he talks about when technology advances, you can't just take it back. Like, you can't open Pandora's box and put it back in. Like, when you open the box, you opened it. There's no going back. So I think in my opinion, I think we need to be very careful with this. I hope that the companies at least know what they're doing with this, because this is very dangerous stuff that we're messing with, because you're playing with fire in this point, in my opinion. I think we're playing with fire, and I think this is going to go either 2 ways. Either they figure out how to implement it properly and we're not going to be screwed, or we're pretty much all screwed. Like, that's kind of the sad reality, guys, is that we don't know until this is done. But I think that's pretty much all we got, guys. Like, we went over the article, we discussed the stuff inside of it. We didn't go over really in detail, because there's a lot of stuff in there that this is a really, really long article. Like, this isn't short.
There's a lot of information about all this.
Yeah, and I'm going to post a link to the article so you guys can give it a look, because I think it's really important to give it a look, because, like I said, so you guys can fact check it, see what you think. And I might even put a link to the Postman article as well, so you guys can see what Postman was talking about when he's regarding these ideas of technology. So yeah, Cameron, thank you for coming on the show, bro. I really appreciate it, man.
No problem.
So yeah, guys, I think that's all I got for you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I know that when you guys hear this episode, I'm going to be moving back home. Obviously, I'll be done with my finals and everything. So obviously, yeah, my first year, I'll probably do an episode discussing, just like a short episode discussing my first year in college and giving you guys my own personal take. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you guys so much for coming back and listening. I really appreciate it. I love you guys to death. Take care of yourselves, guys. Bye.